So what are we doing here today? So we are going to be talking about all kinds of things today. But let me do a little introduction here. Let me see, figure out if I can do this. There we go. That's me. So what do I do? So I've been working on Decred since the dawn of Decred's time. I work in new systems development, which basically means I typically am the one who does proof of concept type work, new things that need to be worked out, experimental stuff that may or may not succeed or even be turned into a product. And I also work as the CTO of Company Zero, which is the company that actually got Decred off the ground. So we are trying to de-link these two, but I'll get into that in a couple of seconds here. So we're going to talk about governance today. So those two cute little ferrets are my daughters, and that's typically what happens when I mention the words governance. So why the heck do we need governance? Well, we're going to find out today. So what is Decred? Let's have a quick introduction, so for the folks who don't know. So Decred is its own blockchain that has some roots in Bitcoin. We have been around for ages in crypto years. We started, our chain went live in February 2016. We have been around, or we have been hacking on it since 2013. So it's a pretty well-established blockchain, and we've done some things. We have been on the forefront of innovation on blockchain technology. So let me go over some of the things that we are today. So we are a digital autonomous currency. What does that mean? So that means that you can do whatever you want, make whatever payments you want. You're not going to get censored by anybody. You're not beholden to any rules. Use it as you wish. So we created it because we were anticipating, and we actually saw this when we started playing in the Bitcoin world, that there was no way to settle a crisis or settle any questions or any disputes. This is where the whole governance thing came in. I'll get into quite a bit of detail in there in a second. So what Decred also does is that we put the stakeholders in charge of the coin instead of the miners, or as it typically works. So we're going to go debate that a little bit as well. So in the governance is opt-in. So if you're a Decred holder, you can participate in the system and in votes and determine what's going to happen next. So what are some of the features that we have? So we are self-sustained. That means that we have a dev reward, or sorry, every block skims off 10% of the block reward for our dev subsidy. And that is used to pay for infrastructure, work that's being done, salaries, that kind of good stuff. So we were never an ICO. We are a pure blockchain. We never received any VC money. We're self-funded. So we are not beholden to anybody's agenda. We are only beholden to our own agenda. So Decred is a proof of work, proof of stake, hybrid consensus. And what that means is that we use both proof of work to secure the network, and then we use proof of stake to actually make decisions. So staking and voting, they're a little bit synonymous. But basically what it means is if you are a Decred holder, you can purchase tickets, which then give you the privilege to vote. Voting is fun because we actually give you some of the Decred back. So you can actually accrue Decred simply by voting. So it's a pretty attractive system. So Decred actually spent a lot of its time during development is to figure out tension and incentives. And what does that mean? So one of the reasons why we think that Bitcoin had some issues was that there was not enough tension and incentives. Folks, the mining folks essentially are the only ones that have right access to the blockchain, and therefore they ultimately decide what goes and what doesn't. So we've thought that it would be a good idea to give some of that power to the stakeholders, and that's where the tension and incentives come in. So they put them both at a little bit of odds and incentivize them both in slightly different ways, so that we all can get along and and make a network that is going to work well for everybody, and not just for one of the groups. As I mentioned earlier, we are at the forefront of innovation. We do a whole bunch of code. In fact, a lot of our code is being forked. Some projects honestly even wait until we drop code so they can reuse it. So we are doers, not marketeers. Hence, big beard, Unix guy here, and not a gifted speaker. So let me give you some highlights of what we did the past year. So last year, we actually got on-chain voting activated. And what on-chain voting does is, this is actually where one of the most interesting features of Decred. This is where we can actually make consensus and protocol changes without breaking the blockchain. So this is controlled hard forking. We'll get into a bit more detail here in a bit. So we enabled Lightning Network a couple of months ago. That is really cool. I'm sure you guys at this point have heard about Lightning. We have a cool implementation, so you can do super quick transactions on the blockchain. So another thing that we actually pioneered a little bit is the cross-chain atomic swaps. So we were the ones who wrote the code that I think, as far as I know at this point, it's the only one that exists. Am I losing my audio? So I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. So the cross-chain atomic swaps is where you can exchange value between two blockchains. So the idea there is that you can do a trustless, escrowless exchange between two parties. So we originated that technology, and we've done some cross-chain atomic swaps between Litecoin and Decred. It was pretty cool. It was all over Twitter. So folks these days show up and actually give us some of their code to say, hey, would you make this work with our chain as well? So that's a really cool new feature that we added. So in the future, we're going to add the Politeia platform. And Politeia is going to be our tier 2 voting platform. That's where community can provide input to the project on where they want to see it go next. Another big feature that we're working on currently is enhanced user privacy. So currently, we are just like Bitcoin, just a giant ledger, so people can follow where Decred goes, and we don't love that. So we are adding a portion of code to add privacy. So, and we are also nearing actually becoming a full-on DAE, so that's a digital autonomous entity where the community decides where the coin goes next and not a benevolent dictator. So why do we need governance? So first of all, and first and foremost, really for dispute resolution. So at one point, you never know this, the unknown unknowns. Things happen, and you need to modify something on the protocol or on the block level. Something's got to change, and you need to have a mechanism to make those decisions. So in Bitcoin, that's not really possible. So what really happens is you have a bunch of folks that yell at each other on Twitter, and really nothing gets done. So what happened last year, with the whole SegWit debacle, that's what we saw in 2013 that was going to happen at some point. And that's actually, again, that's why we started working on Decred. So governance is also needed for future-proofing. Something is going to happen at some point in time, and you cannot anticipate it. So you need to have a change mechanism, and that's what governance brings you as well. One of the features that we actually built in is that it's censorship resistant. We find it important, so if you go on Twitter and you say something ugly about Twitter, it disappears pretty quickly. So I've said ugly things, they didn't like it, gone. So we want to make sure that anybody who makes a proposal, that they can prove to the entire world that they made that proposal and they will not be censored. Of course, we are going to remove things like blatant racism or some other garbage in our proposal system. Sorry, but it does not mean that something bad will happen or somebody will censor something that shouldn't have. And at that point, you can actually have the debates, because you as a user have the power to show that you were censored, and therefore you have some recourse. So the governance tiers. So it's going to be a two-tiered proposal system. Tier 1 is on-chain voting, as I mentioned earlier. That is where the rubber meets the road. So tier 2 is the off-chain proposal system. So that's more of a wish list in a signaling mechanism. So tier 1 is actively working. So that's working on a blockchain. We have done several votes that have passed. For example, enabling Lightning Network was one that required a tier 1 vote. Tier 2 is a couple of weeks, months down the line from becoming activated. So let's talk about a little the tier 1. There's a lot of big words in here. So tier 1 is where the rubber meets the road. The way it works is that the code actually has been written and it's dormant inside the daemon. So that's the full node implementation. So once enough of the network has upgraded to a certain version, then the network will actually automatically start the voting period. So the voting period lasts for about a month, and people can vote at that point. So as you vote, your votes get recorded in the blockchain, and at the end of the voting period, there is a tally. And if the tally passes, then the code actually goes into, gets essentially activated. I got to be a bit more careful there, because we actually have a period of time where we let the network settle. So some folks need to upgrade their software, there's businesses using it, so we have about a month hold, but the code is activated and cannot be deactivated. So this is how we resolve contentious issues. So the vote passed or did not pass, and it's irrelevant what Joe Internet is saying on Twitter. So it is a controlled hard fork. So that's why we only use these ones for consensus changes. We will actually physically, at the calculated height, fork the network into another side. So what this gives us is the ability to scale into the future and future-proof our network. I'm going to have to accelerate a little bit, because I'm running out of time here. So tier 2. So this is the one that is not finished yet, that I'm actually actively hacking on, and this should pop out in the next couple of weeks. So tier chain is basically the community wish list. This is what people want to see in the future in the project. So the idea is you come up with a proposal, you write it down, you add some pictures, you add diagrams, and then you submit that. So then it will be reviewed by a group of people, and the only thing that group of people is going to do is to make sure that it passes some sort of mustard, so that it's, like I said earlier, not blatant racist or just garbage. So at that point, we're going to publish it, and then folks can start voting on it. So they can say, hey, I like this proposal, I would like to spend this amount of decred to go obtain that new feature. So what the tier 2 is also going to bring us is a method to disperse money for non-technical projects, like marketing. Going to one of these events is essentially, for some reason, not free. So you have to spend some cash, and this was one of the things that you could do with it. Is, okay, so we really would like to go to Miami, and that is going to cost so many decred to, put a bunch of people on an airplane and a hotel room and get your swag out here. So that's also what the tier 2 is going to be used for. So once it's going to be complete, it is going to have also a disbursement schedule. And what that will do is will give you the ability to come up with a project that is complex, needs to be funded, but needs to be funded over time. So you could say, I'm going to need 100 decred a month for 12 months, right? So at that point, you would disburse money on a monthly basis, for example, and say, okay, the milestones are being hit, and therefore, we're going to give you the next funding round. If they're not hit, they're not going to get disbursed. We shut down that proposal, the development on that. So with that, we are at booth 212, I want to say. We are out there in force. A lot of our folks are out there. We have a lot of different people that are going to be able to speak to different things. There's developers, there's people that do some marketing, there's some folks that do the trading stuff. So come talk to us. We have amazing shirts, great tattoos. I'm wearing one. So come by, swing by, come talk to us, and we can go over some things. I have one more thing. Stop, hold the applause. So we are having a really awesome competition in Austin, Texas on February 10th, I want to say. We're doing a Politeia. So it's going to be a competition for the folks who can come up with a novel use of the Politeia platform. It is going to be given, so the first prize is going to be $10,000 US in decred. So there's a way for you to get that. So definitely come talk to us, come talk to me about the Politeia challenge at the booth, and I'll give you all the details on it. Thank you.